Alright, so when I first started this channel, I didn't intend for it to be a film review channel, and I still don't, but that being said, I did see a movie a couple weeks ago, and I wanted to do a review on it before it was out of theaters. Also, fair warning, my landlord is currently doing work on an apartment next to me. There's also one of my neighbor's kids running around playing or something, so if you hear noises in the background, that's what that is. I just wanted to get that out of the way. I also feel like I'm doing a disclaimer for every video that I've been doing, which maybe that's going to be my thing. But I want to do a film review. Like I said, I saw this movie a couple weeks ago. The movies don't breathe. I really enjoyed it. It's a movie directed by Fede Alvarez. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Somebody correct me if I'm not. Fede Alvarez also directed the remake of Evil Dead, which I didn't see. I still don't know if I plan on seeing it because I'm kind of wary of all the remakes and reboots and continuations going on right now in cinema and television. So I've been trying to sort of stay away from those unless I have a vested interest in those remakes. But at any rate, Fede Alvarez directed this film. I believe Sam Raimi was one of the producers on it, which he obviously did the original Evil Dead, he did the Spider-Man films, he did Army of Darkness, and I like all those films except Spider-Man 3. I'm kind of iffy on that like everybody else. But Fede Alvarez was very effective in this film. He was a very good choice for director. And it's kind of making me think that I might want to see the Evil Dead that he did. I'm assuming that, Raimi, even though he wasn't a director, was probably an inspiration and an influence and helped with this film. You can definitely see some of his trademarks in the film, especially there's a bit of this like sort of gross out horror, and it's almost darkly humorous. I don't want to give it away. It's toward the end of the film, and there is sort of that like gross out horror humor sort of sprinkled in there, but it's not as humorous as Raimi would play it as. So you can kind of see him in the movie a little bit. But other than that, it's very much it's a very good movie. It's a very intimate movie, for lack of a better term. It's basically just in a house. I mean, there are some outside shots of like a neighborhood and where the other characters live and stuff like that. So there is that. But this film is only about 90 minutes long, and most of it takes place in this house. The basic premise of the film is that there's these young people, played by Jane Levy, Dylan Minnette, and Daniel Zovatto, who I haven't seen in anything else, although I do know that Jane Levy and Dylan Minnette at least have done quite a few other things. They're young people. They break into houses, and you get the idea that Jane Levy and Daniel Zovatto's characters are sort of down on their luck, and they're just trying to make it better for themselves, especially Jane Levy. She is the main character of this film. Dylan Minnette, his character seems to have it a little better, and he's kind of helping Jane Levy's character, Daniel Zovatto's character, because he's their friend, and he wants to see them, improve their lives, and he has a means to do that. I don't want to give away what his means is. There's very small plot points in this film, but they're important, so I don't want to give them away. So these three young people have been breaking into houses, but it's been very small things. I think they say something along the lines of nothing more than a couple $1,000, because it would be, a felony instead of a misdemeanor in that case, or something to that effect. I'm not sure what the logistics are of the legality of that, but that's basically what they say. But then they hear that this old blind man, who basically lives in the neighborhood all by himself, has come into a large sum of money. And so they decide, okay, we're going to break into this man's house, and he's old and blind, so we can even do it while he's there, and steal the money. And so you think, okay, there's going to be a home invasion film, and they're going to torture the blind man or whatever. And if you've seen the trailers for the film, then you know that that's not the case. And it sort of turns the idea of the home invasion film on its ear. And as I said, these kids they're kids. They're very inexperienced. They're not, in it to hurt anybody or harm anybody or rob anybody blind, if you excuse the pun. But when they hear about this large sum of money, they can't resist it. Especially. So there's sort of a sympathy element for the characters, even though they are breaking into someone's home. They are doing it for reasons that are somewhat noble. Jane Levy's character is trying to make the life of somebody else better. Daniel Zovato is he's basically just in it for the money. Yes, his life is crap, but he's really not trying to help anybody else. And Dylan Minette's character, he's sort of the voice of reason, and like I said, his life isn't as bad as the other two, so he's kind of just doing it to help his two friends who do have lives that aren't that great. So there is sort of a sympathy for these characters, except for Daniel Zavato's, he's sort of the jerk, which in these kind of films you sort of always have to have a jerk, especially in a horror film. Man isn't just a old blind man. He became blind because he's a veteran. You are shown in this movie that he still very much has the abilities that he had when he was a soldier. And in fact, his senses, other than his sight, have become better because he has lost his sight. So he's able to use that to his advantage. And it becomes this very tense film. The characters who are invading this man's home become the victims because you think, okay, they're breaking into this man's home, it's going to be a film where this man is defending himself, but it goes beyond self-defense. And there's a scene very early on in the movie that sort of breaks that idea of, okay, he's going to be defending himself for you, because he defends himself and then he goes one step further. And again, I don't want to give it away, but there's that idea of, oh crap, he's not going to hold back on these people. So it's this idea of, does he know they're all in the home? Is he going to try to kill all of them? And how are they going to get out? Because this guy's house is locked up and boarded up. They're only able to get in one way, and that one way winds up being blocked off. And so it's just this very tense, very small, as I said, almost intimate movie. And it's very effective in that. And when I mean it's effective, I don't mean that it's shot well, or it's acted well, or it's directed well, or it looks great. And all of those are true. When I mean it's effective, I mean it takes that idea, that very small idea of being trapped in this man's house. It keeps winding it, and it's just this tense, visceral feeling. It has you on the edge of your seat for the entire movie. And when I say it's effective, I mean that a few days later, I did see it over the weekend, and on Monday I was at work, and I work nights as a security guard, and after 9 o'clock, I am the only one there. And I was patrolling in the basement, which is dark and full of corridors, like parts of this man's house, and I stepped on some metal sheeting that was on the floor. And before my foot registered the sensation of me stepping on these things, my ear registered the sound of metal shuffling around. So me, a grown man, walking around in this place that I'm usually very comfortable in, even though it's kind of dark and creepy, and I've been working here for like a year and a half, I stepped on the sheet of metal, and I heard the shuffling metal noise, and I went, ah! And I'm like, oh, I'm okay. I'm not going to die. I'm not, there's no crazy old blind man coming for me. So, like, this movie it stayed with me, and it's still kind of with me. It was this creepy, dark film, and it was very good. And like I said, the acting and the directing is great. I haven't seen any of the young actors in any other film before. I know that they've done some other stuff, I just haven't had a chance to watch it. In fact, I believe Jane Levy was in the remake of Evil Dead. So, and I really enjoyed her in this film, so that's another merit toward maybe watching the remake of Evil Dead. I have seen Stephen Lang in a couple of things. I saw him in The Men Who Stare at Goats. This film kind of just shows the range of Stephen Lang, because he's kind of a silly character in that film. He was in Avatar, which he played the colonel who was after the unobtainium, and he was sort of this hardened colonel, but he was he was a jerk to everybody. And in this, he plays sort of this imposing, silent character who you don't know what to think about. So he's got this amazing range, and it really shows in this film. And he has very few lines in the film, because he's not just blind, he's also very silent. He's very quiet. He does have a few lines, but there aren't many of them, and he doesn't need them, because his acting is fantastic. And this film sort of verges on slasher flick and thriller. It's not a straight thriller because the plot is quite small. There is a twist in it, which I enjoyed, but it's still kind of a small plot. But it's not a slasher film in that the plot isn't, okay, it's this evil, nameless, faceless guy. I mean, he's not given a name, but it's not, this evil, nameless, faceless guy who just wants to kill people because they're evil. He has motivations, and you find out what those motivations are. Again, I don't want to give them away, but you find out what they are, and they're effective, and the way it's acted is very good. Like, when he first appears, you think, okay, this is going to be a home invasion film, and they're going to, tie him up or whatever. Even though you've seen the trailers where he's chasing him around the house, you think, okay, he's just this old guy, because they break into the house, they make some noise, he comes around a corner, and he goes, who's there? And you go, oh crap, they're going to, like, hurt this guy. And that's why he gets pissed. But that's not what it is at all. So, he acts like this frail old man, and then he just turns it around, and it's really good. So, the acting in this film was great. The other actors, I can't say enough about them. They played scared young people who are in way over their heads very well. Every single one of them did. As I said, Daniel Zavato's character was kind of a jerk. He played that very well. Jane Levy is sort of like this stricken yet tough, and she's kind of tough because she's stricken, young lady, and you're rooting for her the whole time. And Dylan Minnette is he's a guy who's also in way over his head, but he, wants to help his friends. One plot point that I do want to say is that he gets a chance to get out of the house, and then he kind of thinks about it, and he turns back around, and he comes back in, because he just wants to help his friends. So again, you feel for these characters, and you almost want them to get the money at the end of the film. You see what happens to them, and it's very visceral. And that's one last thing I want to say about the movie, is that it is violent. It's an R-rated horror film, and my girlfriend, who I'm going to mention a lot of these film reviews at least because she sees a lot of movies with me, and she's sort of a lens through which I can see movies, because while I'm not a film buff, I do enjoy them quite a bit more than her, and I kind of get them a little more than her. And she's sort of a contemporary film viewer. She told me she didn't like the violence and all that stuff, and I'm like, but the violence is, first of all, for an R-rated horror flick, the violence is fairly tame. There are a few scenes where if you're squeamish, it's a little weird, but there's no limbs being ripped off, there's no faces being ripped off, there's no viscera, there's no, disembowelments or any of that crazy stuff. I'm not saying that it's not violent, I'm just saying for an R-rated horror flick, it's fairly tame. She, didn't like the violence, she didn't like certain other aspects, but then when I explained them to her, and I said, well, the reason for this is because it's important to the plot, and it's sort of a driving force, and it gives meaning to these other parts of the film, she's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So there is one very small nitpick I have with the film. There's sort of the scene at the end, which again is effective, which is why it's a small nitpick, because it still serves as part of the plot. It's a little too convenient. It kind of shows you, it kind of gives you too much. Because it's a horror film. Horror films are supposed to be kind of, even if they end on a good note, they're kind of supposed to be a little bittersweet. And this, it wraps it up a little too neatly. So that's a very small nitpick I have with the film. Everything else I thought was fantastic. I would love to watch it again, which is rare for a horror film. Once you watch it, all the surprises are gone. But I think there might be a few things I missed. Even if there weren't, I thought it was great. I want to show it to my friends. I want to, watch it again just for fun. Not at night. Not on a night right before I have work. But I do definitely want to watch it again. So that was my thoughts on Don't Breathe. Definitely go out and see it. I'm going to suggest this movie. I don't want to give ratings, but I do highly suggest that anybody, if you're over 18, well, over 17, sees this film. I thought it was very good. Thanks.